How many of you have ever ordered something for lunch at work? I ordered a pizza for lunch at work the other day. My boss told me when the delivery guy gets here, he said, be sure you give him a good tip. He said, we want everybody in the community, when they think of our organization, to have good thoughts. So when the delivery guy got there, I paid him for the pizza. I told him, don't ever come to work here. I didn't give him a good tip. I gave him the best tip possible. And hopefully he'll take it to heart and never interview for a position at the place where I work. But speaking of interviews, that reminds me of an interesting interview situation I had the other day. I applied with a company that somebody told me about, this company called Chip and Dale's. It seems like they were looking for 10 to 12 buff floormen nightly. Well, I put in an application because that sounded like pretty good hours, and I figured I could buff floors as well as the next man. Well, when I got to the interview, they gave me this very nice tuxedo. I figured it was some sort of sign-on bonus or something. But then they told me I needed to go in the back and put it on and come out and dance around and strip down to my underwear. I said, if this is what you got to do to get the job, you can tell Chip and or Dale that they can buff their own floors. But all this talk about work and jobs reminds me that I did turn in my notice to my job the other day. I called him one morning around 11. I'm supposed to be there at 8, but I called him one morning around 11 and I said, yesterday was my last day. The reason I gave him notice was because I'm moving to Nashville. And the reason I'm moving to Nashville is because I've written this song that I think is going to make me rich and famous. And it fits in well with the music they have up there around Nashville. It goes a little bit like this. There's a tear in my beer 'cause I'm crying for you, dear. You are on my lonely mind. I am going to drink till I can't move a toe. Then maybe my heart won't hurt me so. And then it goes back to the tear in the beer thing. And there's this part about walking the floors. So you hear that song on the radio in the next couple of months.
There's already a song like that.
What'd you say?
There's already a song like that.
There is? Oh no! Now what am I going to do? Well, it's okay. I really am moving to Nashville, but it's not just because I thought I had written that song. I'm moving to Nashville because my girlfriend wants to move to Nashville. Yeah, you see, I met a girl through this website that finds dates for women prisoners. You can sign up to date one that has some years left on her sentence, or you can sign up to date one that's being released. If you sign up to date one that's being released, they send you an email that says like 7 women being released from such and such a prison in New Orleans on February 4th, or 12 women being released from such and such a prison in Birmingham on January 3rd. So anyway, I got one of these emails, and I went to the prison it mentioned. By the time I got there were 3 women standing out front. I went up to one of them, I said, what were you in for? She said, killing my boyfriend. I said, does that mean you're single? And the rest, as they say, was history. And anyway, she wants to move to Nashville. So I figure I better just go with the flow on this one. But all this talk about women reminds me of the time that I toured an insane asylum a few years back. Yeah, they were giving me a tour of this insane asylum, and we came up to this one room, and there was a man in the room, and he was sitting on the floor in the corner, and he had his knees hugged up around his chest, and he was saying, Lula, Lula. I said, what's the matter with that man? They said, well, that man was supposed to marry Lula, but he jilted her. He left her at the altar. And he said not long after that he regretted it, but she wouldn't take him back. And so ever since that day, he's just sat there on the floor and moaned, Lula, Lula. So we went on down a little ways. We came to a room. There was a man standing and looking out the window. And he was calling, Lula, Lula. I said, what's the matter with that man? And they said, well, that man was also supposed to marry Lula, but she jilted him. She left him at the altar, and ever since that day, all he's done is stand and look out that window and call Lula, hoping she'd come back. So we went down to a third room. It was a padded room, and there was a man in the padded room in a straitjacket, and he was slamming his head against the wall, and he was screaming, Lula! Lula! I said, what's the matter with that man? They said, that's the man that married Lula. But all this talk about marriage puts me in mind of the time that I was in prison a few years back. Yeah, I did a short stint in prison a few years back for loitering, as I recall. But anyway, the first day they put me in with the general population, and there were all these guys milling around, and all of a sudden somebody yelled out, 46! Everybody laughed all over the whole prison. Guys were bent double over laughing, slapping their knees, and so it quieted down. A little bit later, somebody yelled out, 71! Everybody laughed again. Guys were rolling on the floor laughing, and it quieted down. A little bit later, somebody yelled out, 38! And again, laughter all over the whole prison. So I said to my cellmate, I said, what's going on here? I said, somebody calls out a number. Everybody laughs. I said, what gives? He said, well, we only have one joke book in this prison. It has 100 jokes. He said, we've all read it so much, we've memorized it. So now when anybody wants to tell a joke, instead of telling a joke, we just call out the number. We all remember the joke. Everybody laughs. I said, well, that sounds like fun. I said, I would like to tell a joke. He said, all right. So they brought me the joke book, and I looked over it for a while, and finally I said, I found number 83. Number 83 was the funniest joke you have ever heard in your entire life. So I said, I'm ready to tell a joke. And he said, all right, go ahead. So I stood up. I said, 83! And there's silence. Nobody laughed. One guy over here said, oh, that was it. I sat back down. I said, well, what did I do wrong? He said, well, some people can tell them, and some people can't.